There seem to be two separate dimensions here. 1. Biological dimension, damage to DNA. Some substances can directly cause DNA damage to the human body. This usually happens with substances called mutagens or carcinogens. Burnt, fried meats. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, and heterocyclic amines can cause DNA damage. Overprocessed foods, nitrated sausage, salami, processed meats, create nitro components that can cause mutations in DNA. Excessive sugar plus fructose. Free radical production increases, which can lead to DNA breaks. Alcohol, acetaldehyde accumulation can directly disrupt DNA. In other words, some foods directly damage the genetic material, but this does not change a person's morals or behavior. 2. Moral psychological dimension. Corruption of morality is more related to behavioral, social, or psychological factors. It is more related to the environment, culture, and consciousness rather than food. For example, fast food or sugary foods can have an addictive-like effect, but this does not directly disrupt morality, but rather creates weakness of will, addiction, and disciplinary problems. Result: foods that damage DNA, burnt meat, processed foods, drinks with too much sugar, alcohol, corruption of morals. These do not directly corrupt morals but can weaken the will by causing addiction. In other words, biological harm and moral corruption are separate mechanisms. One works at the cellular level, the other at the social-spiritual level. That's a very good question. The issue of eating with hands or using a spoon and fork can be evaluated in different dimensions in terms of biology and morality. 1. Biological, in terms of DNA damage. Eating by hand. If the hands are not clean, bacteria and toxins can be transferred. Some of these microorganisms can produce toxins and put stress on the cells, but they do not directly cause DNA mutation. They carry a higher risk of infection. Eating with cleanly washed hands has no special DNA-damaging effects. Gelatin using a fork spoon. Metallic containers, especially low-quality aluminum or materials that release heavy metals, can cause indirect damage to DNA in the long term. For example, aluminum can negatively affect nerve cells and DNA repair. Stainless steel or quality materials are safe. In other words, the determinant in terms of DNA damage is not by hand or by spoon, but hygiene and the health of the material used. 2. Moral, cultural dimension. Eating with hands. In many cultures, Indian, Arab, African, Anatolian village traditions, it is considered respectful, natural, and direct contact with the blessing. It has no negative effect on morality. In fact, it is thought to have a spiritual dimension. But it may be perceived differently according to the social etiquette of the society. In some places it may be considered rude. Using cutlery. It is considered in accordance with more modern, regular etiquette. But the main thing that determines morality is again the intention, attitude, and social context, not the tool used. Summary: from the DNA point of view, if the hands are clean, eating by hand is harmless, spoon fork is also harmless, but low-quality metal can be a problem in the long run. From the point of view of morality, eating by hand or using a fork does not violate morality, only cultural perceptions change. You have come to a very important point. Why shouldn't food be eaten by hand? His question is actually based on medical, hygienic, and social grounds. It has no connection with DNA or direct moral corruption, but it has indirect effects. In terms of health and hygiene, microorganism transfer, hands come into contact with hundreds of surfaces throughout the day. No matter how much they are washed, bacteria, viruses, and parasite eggs can remain between the nails or on the skin. These can pass into the stomach with food and produce toxins that can lead to infection and even bowel cancer. Chemical residues. Hand soaps, cleaning products, or contaminants, e.g. heavy metals, can pass from the skin to food. This creates an indirect basis for DNA damage. Risk of spread. Eating by hand, especially at the communal table, accelerates the transmission of diseases. Cultural and social perception. In modern city life, using cutlery is preferred for the perception of being clean, tidy, and hygienic. Eating with hands in international or official settings may be seen as disrespectful or primitive behavior. This can also affect social reputation. Psychological behavioral dimension. Fork and spoon create a certain distance. Eating becomes regular, controlled, portion-oriented. Eating with hands can be faster and uncontrolled, may lead to overeating or unconsciousness in an unhygienic environment. Result: eating by hand is not harmful, but it is risky in terms of hygiene and social environment. The answer to the question, why shouldn't it be eaten? 1. Possibility of bacterial and viral contamination. 2. Risk of chemical residue. 3. The possibility of spreading disease at a common table. 4. Loss of social perception and prestige.